Probably when I was 11, 12, or 13. I assume most hockey players heard of the Stanley Cup and always wanted to win the Stanley Cup and hold the Stanley Cup. But I think as I played for the Toronto Marlies on my way up here in Toronto. And as I got a little older, minor bantam, certainly you heard about the Memorial Cup and you watched it on television, and it's certainly something I always wanted to play junior instead of going to the college route, and that is something that would be the first prize to get before the Stanley Cup. I think most of the pressure we would have put on ourselves, but I remember, like with the Marley chain, you used to get into the Marley games for free. So they had a little section for Marley Pee-wees and minor bantam and bam. So I remember one of the great teams with Harris, Gardner, and Shutt, and they actually got beat by Peterborough, Bob Gainey and Peterborough. And then probably my first real, the sight of seeing someone hold the Memorial Cup was the '73 team with the Howe brothers and obviously George Armstrong is the coach. So I was still 2 years away from that, but I pretty much, once I saw that was something I really aspired to. So I again, not so much pressure from the management or whatever. I think it was more pressure from ourselves to want to win it. That was unbelievable, yeah. So we watched them, and then they lost a lot of players. They lost the Howe brothers, obviously, and Glenn Gould and Peter Marin, some of those greats. So the year I was there in '74, we had a lot of really good young players that all came in together. Johnny Anderson, John Tonelli, Schmirk, Mike Kitchen. I think they could protect 10 around the Toronto area back then. So all 10 of us kind of came in together, Mike Gazicki. And so it was a learning year. We had some great leadership. That year, Bruce Boudreau was on the team in '74. He won in '73 and '74. John Hughes, Brad Winton. We had a lot of really good leaders. And then it was up to us in '75 to go and try and win it. What I remember most about that year, I believe there were 7 games that we had to win or we would have been eliminated, starting with, I think it was Kingston was the first year. And back then it was the first team to 8 points, so ties counted as just 1 point each. So against Kingston, we had to win Game 7 and Game 8. And then we played Sudbury, same thing. We were down 7 points to 5, had to win Game 7, Game 8. Played the Finn Cups to almost a sold-out crowd at Maple Leaf Gardens. That's one of my fondest memories of the junior outside of winning the Memorial Cup. Packed house, Game 7, we beat the Finn Cups, and then there was 2 games in the Memorial Cup that we had to win to win it all. And so very, very special memories, especially the really tight games like that we had to win and we came through. I would start with George Armstrong. He was such a great coach. We had a lot of talent on the team. I think 7 or 8 of us made it to the NHL. And George just let us play. He was just a great coach that way. We played a lot of river hockey, a lot of pond hockey, not a lot of structure. The power play, he just put us out there and let us kind of use our own imagination to set play. Now, obviously if things weren't working well, he would come and help us out. But I think we just had so much respect for him, and you wanted to play so hard for him. It certainly didn't want to let him down. So especially in those big games, we kind of looked at George Armstrong as our inspiration, and it certainly worked for us. It was pretty intimidating because you didn't really know what to expect. You had never played those teams before. You'd heard about them, and back then it was almost a stereotype. The Quebec League was a bunch of scorers and fast players, which our team was, and the West was all the big tough rough and tumble teams, which actually New Westminster was. I think they were the biggest team in all of hockey that year. They were a big team, and so it was a little intimidating, and I think we got intimidated the first game we played them. They were a big, strong team. They took it to us, and I believe they beat us 6-2 pretty handily. Our games against Quebec were great, really good games, but again, with only 3 teams in it, the first place team went on, and then teams 2 and 3 had to play, I believe, on the Friday to see who would play in the championship game. So it really didn't matter how you did. If you finished second or third, you were still going to get another game, unlike in today's game. So like I say, we did okay against Sherbrooke and New West in the first game. Intimidated was pretty good, but I remember in the final game, George Armstrong came in and had a really good chat with us, and we went out there and we played a really hard, strong game. They tried to take us to us physically. We just sucked it up, and and I think we beat them 7-3 that game, which was great and a great feeling, and it's great to hold this Memorial Cup after that. Gabby, Bruce, he went into a bit of a slump in scoring. Now he was getting tons of assists, and he was putting a lot of pressure on himself to score, and because he was our captain, and he was one of our leaders, and that game I remember him breaking out. I think we won 10-4, but it was pretty close right up until the third period, and then Bruce kind of took over, and finally the puck started getting some puck luck, and puck started going the net for him, and we were all so happy for him to see him start putting the puck in there, not only for him but also for ourselves, because he was a huge part of our team. He led the league in scoring that year, and so it was a huge plus, and he certainly had the monkey off his back going into the final game. I think it was George Armstrong's talk to us before the game, and very similar. He'd won 4 Stanley Cups, and how he felt through those games of in going into the Stanley Cup finals, and how he was also afraid, but you got out there and you just gave it everything you had, and you put all that behind you, and I know to me that meant just so much, just to hear George Armstrong, a professional captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, have that little chat, and I think it inspired a lot of us to just go out there. It was only one game. If you got hit or got hurt, it wouldn't have mattered, because the trophy at the end was the prize at the end was the big thing to win, and I think we had a little bit more talent than New West, and like I say, they tried to take it to us early, and I think we stood up to them and just played a fabulous game that game. It's actually kind of funny, because there was one game in, I believe it was Sudbury, maybe Kingston. No, it was Kingston. It was Kingston for sure. We were down in the, I think it was 4-4 or something, and Bruce and I had Boudreau and I had a thing that anything that was close to the net, near the goal line, we were going to put our sticks in the air as it was like a goal. So I took a backhand. The ref was actually behind me. There was only one referee at the time, and I don't know if the puck went in. I think it hit the post and came back under the goalie. Both of us put our sticks up in the air like it had gone in the net, and the linesman, the guy put the red light on because he made a guitar reaction, and the referee, I know he never saw it, so he signaled a goal. And I went back to Kingston for a charity hockey game, maybe 25 years after it, and the people were still going, "That was not a goal. There's no way that was." So that was really funny to see that. So that brought back a lot of good memories. And I'd been to Sudbury, a few times for some charity games, and the people still remember those games, because Game 8 was played in the opposing rink. We'd won home ice draw at the playoffs, but Game 7 was at our rink. And the way it was set up, Game 8 had to be played in the visitors' rink. So Game 8 was in Kingston and Game 8 was in Sudbury, and a lot of those people still remember those games. I think George had a big part of it with the way he coached, the way he was. When I coached St. Mike's Majors, I tried to take a lot of that influence with him, and I've heard Bruce mention before that he's taken a lot of different pieces from his coaches, and just knowing Bruce's personality, I'm sure a lot of it is the George Armstrong personality with his players, because he is a great players coach. Johnny Anderson's turned into a fabulous coach, and so I think you just take bits and pieces of everything. But I know George would definitely, the way I coach, had a big chunk of him in me. It's hard to remember. I think you're just so in the moment that I know everything just seemed like slow motion. You're looking at the clock and it looks like it's just going tick, tick, and you're just going, come on, clock, run, because I don't know exactly how much we were up at the time, but I think it was comfortable. But in junior hockey, you never know, because one goal certainly changes the momentum, and it just opens the barn door for the other team. So we certainly wanted to keep the barn door shut. Gary Carr did a fabulous job in net for us throughout the whole playoffs, but certainly in that final game, he stood out. And we had a great defense. We had Trevor Johansson and Mike Kitchen and Mike McEwen that all made it to the NHL, and a guy named Jim Kirkpatrick, and just a really solid defense, which helped our core group. Well, I think it did a lot of things. I think just the character from us having to win 7 games where you'd be eliminated was huge for me. Just how to deal with pressure moving forward. Then I ended up going to the WHA. Our teams weren't very good, so I think we only made the playoffs one year, so it wasn't. But it certainly carried over when I went to Montreal. They'd won 3 Stanley Cups in a row, and we were vying for a 4th. And they obviously had a lot of playoff experience, but because of that Memorial Cup, I also had that experience to pull from. If I didn't have that, it would have been a lot tougher, I'm sure, for me than it was in the playoffs. Not that it's ever easy, but it certainly made it easier for me to internalize, and because I felt that pressure when I was 18 years old. So when I was 21, it was pretty easy to remember exactly how you felt and how you reacted in those big games. A lot of it's just little things. For me, I was a winger, especially in our own zone. If it comes around your boards, make sure you get it out. I wasn't much of a shot blocker during the regular season, but come the playoffs, I decided I better block a few shots if I could to try and help the team. Little face-offs, helping your centerman win face-offs, just all those little things that it takes to win championships that a lot of people don't quite understand. A lot of players unfortunately never got a chance to play on teams like that where they got that feeling. And I count myself very blessed playing on that Marley team and everything we had to go through to learn how to win and to win. And then to play on some of those great Montreal teams, and especially when the Stanley Cup in '79 was pretty special. Well, I remember somebody saying that's the hardest trophy to win in any sport. I believe it certainly would be. I believe the hardest trophy to win back in our day in hockey. Now there's a few more teams in the NHL, so that might be a little tougher to win, but. I think there's 53 teams in the league. You only get 3 years to play junior hockey if you're lucky, and obviously the 53 only one can win it a year, and it's certainly something that's very, very special. I like to think now I have 2 grandchildren, 1 more on the way, and they'll be able to look up in the history books and see that I did win the Memorial Cup and also 2 Stanley Cups, but it's certainly something pretty special. It's something that'll be around for forever, and so it is very, very special, and I feel very, very blessed. Messier, Gretzky, Coffey, all the core guys were still there. So that was a team that was actually voted the team of the century. So we're heading out there February 9th. They're having a big thing for us on the 10th and 11th, yeah. So that was quite a team, yeah. So I was... And for me, it was a little different role because I was a little older. I was older than all those core guys. They were 1 or 2 years younger than me. So, Montreal, I was kind of the baby on the team. And here now I'm one of the bigger brothers on the team. So it's funny the 2 correlations to winning those. So, well, it was a fun team to play on because they were so creative and they kind of, Montreal was still kind of up and down the wings. That type of hockey, you didn't come off the wing very much. Edmonton, they wanted you to come off. It was more European influence in the game, and I remember Messier and Anderson. I don't think they ever stopped. They'd come and they'd turn and wheel and come back, and and Wayne, going up the right side and cutting in and finding guys, and so it was a totally different style of playing, and for a guy like me who likes to score goals and be offensive, it was fabulous. I had a lot of fun. When I got there, I played with Messier and Anderson. And then Esa Tikkanen came in for the playoffs that year. We beat Philly in 5. And so the next year, I dropped down and played with Craig McTavish and Mike Krushelinski on the 3rd line. We were more of a checking line, but it was still a pretty good checking line. I think I still got 24 goals that year. So, well, that was the big problem, right? You had Messier. I think it was Tikkanen, Messier, or Gretzky and Curry. Then you had Anderson, Messier, and who was their right winger? Trying to think who they had a right winger. They had there's 2 different guys would have shuffled through there, and then we were kind of the 3rd line penalty killing, and we didn't get much power play time with those guys.